Hello and welcome back to On The Sidelines and episode 5 of our series Off The Sidelines. In this video, we have a lot of topics from the last week in sports. And joining me, of course, as always, is Matthew Liam Bruni. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing good, Ben. How about you?
Not too bad. What have you been up to lately?
Not much. Just been just been trying to keep as busy as possible, and as probably everyone's been trying to do for the
Yeah.
past 2 months now. How about you?
Yeah, as you can see, I'm here in Pohang, South Korea, um, as we'll get to in a little bit. Um, but yeah, before we get to that, let's start with our first topic of the video, which is the NFL schedule release. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
For sure. So last week, in our NFL news segment, we talked about the NFL releasing their schedule just this past Thursday. And me and Ben are going to highlight some notable games just from looking at the schedule in the first couple of days of its release. Ben, what's your first notable game from the schedule?
Yeah, I think a lot of the narrative this season in the NFL is going to be around Tom Brady and his move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now that he's in the same division, of course, as another legendary quarterback, Drew Brees, and the Saints. I've highlighted two games between those two teams. Week 1 in New Orleans on September 13th, and Week 9 in Tampa Bay on November 8th, where the Saints and Buccaneers play each other. So I think they're two of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, definitely two of the best in our lifetime. And to see them play twice a season is going to be pretty awesome. And also, these games could affect who wins the division. So they're not only interesting games, but also important ones too.
Okay. One of the games that I think is notable from the season is, of course, the first game of the regular season, Texans versus Chiefs, which is September 10th. Of course, this was a rematch of last year's AFC divisional playoff game where the Texans were up 24 nothing. But of course, that didn't stop the Chiefs from their miraculous comeback against Houston, which saw them score a touchdown in 7 straight drives. And they ended up with 51 points. So definitely, of course, those are two of the best teams or two of the best teams in the AFC, besides, of course, the Ravens too. So that would be a great matchup to open up the season. What about your second notable game?
Yeah, my second game sort of involves two of the teams we just talked about. I think these two teams are going to be dominating the headlines all season long, and it's Tom Brady's Buccaneers and Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs playing Week 12 in Tampa Bay. It's sort of the best quarterback I think of all time, and probably the best, if not obviously the best quarterback at the moment in Patrick Mahomes playing each other, possibly for the last time. Because since Brady's not in the AFC anymore, these teams only play each other once every 4 years, and I don't think Tom Brady's going to play another 4 years. So unless they meet in a Super Bowl at some point, this is probably the last time we'll see Brady versus Mahomes. Uh, and so like the passing of the torch, I guess, between two of the best quarterbacks. So I think that'll be a pretty interesting game as well. What about you? What's your second game?
Uh, as we've been mentioning in our past couple of choices, we've mentioned a lot about the Chiefs already.
Yeah,
Uh, and my game is the Chiefs and Ravens, which is September 28th. It's a Monday night football game. Of course, as I mentioned, that these are some of the best teams from the AFC, two of the best teams from the AFC facing off. And both offenses are very talented with Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs and Lamar Jackson for the Ravens at quarterback. And of course, this can potentially be an AFC championship game, of course, if there is a season. Um, and if the Ravens don't show up like they did against the Titans just in the past year in the playoffs, they probably might make it to the Super Bowl. And what's your third notable game?
this is another team I mentioned already. The New Orleans Saints. I think it'd be interesting to see them play on Christmas Day. It's going to be only the 11th game ever played on a Friday in NFL history since the NFL and AFL merged in 1970. So not only is it going to be cool to see a rare Friday afternoon or a rare Friday game, but also Christmas Day is going to have a lot of attention on it because people sitting around with their families, whatever, want to watch some football. So I think that'll be a pretty interesting game as well. And then obviously, as I said before, like Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks you've ever seen. So uh, he's perfect for that sort of prime time spotlight. And yeah, the first Friday game since 2009, so that should be pretty interesting. How about you? What's your next game?
Yeah, well, for my game, I chose a couple of games that are on the topic of a new stadium. Of course, there's two new stadiums opening up uh, of this coming upcoming NFL season. The first one is SoFi Stadium with the Cowboys at the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday night football, and the Chargers, who are going to share the stadium with the Rams, are playing the Chiefs on week 2. And besides SoFi Stadium, of course, there's also the Las Vegas Raiders, who are going to be opening up the Allegiant Stadium against the Saints. And of course, that actually happens to be the 50th anniversary of the first Monday Night Football game. So that's definitely going to be interesting to watch the 50th anniversary, especially in a city like Vegas.
And that stadium looks pretty nice too. It looks like it's a beautiful stadium.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It's going to be hopefully if we do get an NFL season, we'll be able to yeah, to watch these games.
Yeah, and I heard last night as well they've already sold out like every single game for the Raiders this season, so should be pretty interesting in their first year in Las Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if any Oakland fans are probably are still loyal to the Raiders. We'll see about that.
We'll have to find out, I guess. um, and moving on to next to another league who's announced their sort of return. That's the German soccer league, the Bundesliga, who've announced they'll be returning on May 16th. And it's important to note for any Canadian soccer fans that Sportsnet's going to show the first Bayern Munich game back on May 17th on all of its main channels. And of course, Canadian left back, left winger, whatever you want to call him, Alfonso Davies will be playing for Bayern Munich, hopefully. So definitely stay tuned to that. And Matthew, what do you think that other leagues will start to sort of trickle in now? Now they've seen a couple of major leagues announce that they're going to be coming back soon.
Well, I think it's great that we're seeing some progress in European soccer returning. I think this is one of the first soccer leagues to return, like the first major soccer league in Europe. So that's a start, I guess. Um, but I feel like I even heard today that the Premier League is the earliest they can start is June 1st. So that I feel like that's going to be the next league to open up. I think you also have to be cautious of like all the leagues around the world. You have to be cautious about COVID and its spread amongst players because I know that there's already some COVID cases in with some players. I think in I can't remember correctly which clubs they were, but there's already some cases amongst players. So I think you have to be very cautious about that. But I think like Premier League is going to start in June. I'm predicting that, and then possibly even like maybe even the Spanish league too.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
yeah, I think it makes sense for them to return sooner rather than later because I think you want to have ideally as much of a gap between this season and next season. But also, of course, they have to be careful when they return. Obviously, I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but Bundesliga and any leagues will be behind closed doors with no fans in the stadium. So I think that's going to be an important step to sort of stop the spread of this virus, but while also being able to play sports again. Uh, so I do think and hope that leagues come back sooner rather than later, but as we've been mentioning the last few weeks, they just have to do it whenever it's safe to do so. And I think this obviously the health of the players and staff and whatever should be the priority and not the sport. Ultimately, it's just a game, right? But yeah, it needs to be done in a safe and responsible way.
Well, I think we can guarantee that there's going to be no fans in the stadium, so I don't
Yeah,
think we would worry about overcrowding in that regard. But I think that even like looking at the MLS, looking at the situation in the U.S. right now, I
right.
think it's very cautious for them to start opening up. Of course, the U.S. has a lot of cases right now, over like
Yeah,
over a million now. So I think depending on how severe COVID-19 is in certain countries. You have to, I think you have to sort of base it off that, and that's why the League One already canceled their season.
And speaking of MLS, I think it was either yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. That Toronto FC announced that they will be reopening their training facilities, so
Mhm.
players can have their individual workouts, sort of like social distancing workouts, if you will, um, sort of by themselves or maybe in very, very small groups. Um, that was announced yesterday, and I imagine other teams will start following suit, uh, whether it's Canadian teams or other MLS teams, but it depends on what province or state they're in and what their rules allow for. So, and there are other optional workouts as well for Toronto FC, I think. So, um, yeah, so a step closer to playing games again, but I think we're probably further away over here than we are than in Europe.
Yeah, I think it's only fair, like in regards to opening like training facilities, just even in sports in general, besides soccer. I think it's important that every team has to open up their facilities just so it's fair for everybody to get in the same workouts. Of course, there has to be isolating or social distancing has to be a factor in these practice facilities. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how everything just starts opening up.
Yeah, and then another league that just started up this past week, as which finally sort of explains my background here, is the Korean League, the K League. One and two, I think, both started up the top two divisions. Return of live sports, of course, or major live sports, along with the Korean baseball organization as well has been playing a little bit. Um, Canadian player, former Toronto FC defender Daniel Henry. His team, the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings, took part in the opening game, but lost 1-0 to the Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. Don't suppose you watched any of that or anything like that, did you, Matthew?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great that you're getting into Korean soccer. I mean, especially considering that there's almost no big leagues opening right now, especially like major soccer leagues. But that's great to watch. I mean, I haven't gone into. I might get into it eventually. Maybe I'll start watching games like you are. But yeah, that's great that you're getting into it.
It's also, I think, pretty important for leagues like that or smaller leagues like the Belarusian League has also been playing a little bit on YouTube recently. It's
Mhm.
important that these leagues are sort of taking advantage of all the eyeballs they can get at the moment. Like most people couldn't have named a Korean soccer team a week ago, and now I could probably name every single team in the league and some of the players. Like I'm really getting into this league. Um, and I think I mentioned before, like the game on Friday morning, five, we'll go out at 5:30. Kickoff was at 6. The game is streamed on YouTube on the Copa 90 YouTube channel, and they're going to be streaming one game every single week. So whichever select game they choose. I don't think the second one has been announced yet, but that'll be at some point next week, like Friday to Sunday at some point. So definitely check that out if you want to watch some live soccer. And yeah, it's just it's kind of something different as well. It's kind of not the usual Premier League teams or La Liga teams or MLS teams. It's kind of something different. So it's kind of interesting to sort of see what's going on in the other corner of the world as well.
Yeah, it's there's probably definitely getting a lot of bandwagon fans right now. There's probably a lot of people, a lot of soccer fans in general, probably just jumping on different teams' bandwagons right now.
Yeah, a lot of people
Um,
are jumping on Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. They've won, I think, 7 titles since 2007 or 2009. So a lot of people are jumping on that bandwagon for sure.
yeah, definitely people are cheering more
The
for
winners.
the better team.
I'm more of a Pohang Steelers fan here outside the Steel Yard, as you can see. So but yeah, that's my team. But a lot of people are jumping on the Jeonbuk team.
Hmm, nice. All right. Well, we've been doing a segment lately where we've been talking about the best team from a certain league to win a championship. We've been doing MLB, we've been doing NHL, and then NFL. This week, me and Ben are gonna name our best NBA team from the last decade. So I'll start with my pick. I decided to go with the 2012-2013 Miami Heat. And although the Warriors were the best franchise from the past decade, winning the most championships, the Heat's championship run was definitely not one to forget. That season, the team had a 66-16 record in the regular season, which was first in the league. And that is also the most wins from a Heat team in its franchise history. In the playoffs that season, they first swept the Milwaukee Bucks, and following that up with a 4-1 series win against the Chicago Bulls in the conference semifinals. The Heat's first real challenge in that playoff run was against the Indiana Pacers when it came down to a Game 7. But, of course, Miami being as dominant as they are or were, won 99-76, playing in the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs. And again, San Antonio gave Miami a run for their money in that series when it looked like that they would beat them in Game 6. And being down 3-2 in the series in the final seconds of the game, Ray Allen hit the clutch three that sent the Heat to overtime, or sent the game to overtime, with Miami winning. And then in the Game 7 of that series in the NBA Finals, they beat the Spurs 95-88, which was their third championship in their franchise's history. And in regards to players, that team was definitely stacked that season with players like LeBron James, of course, Ray Allen, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, just a couple to highlight the roster.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what was your?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the Miami Heat were dominant at the start of the decade, but I think it's hard to pick a team that's not one of the Golden State Warriors teams from the past 5 years. They made all 5 of the NBA Finals in the last 5 seasons. Like the 2015-16 somehow didn't win, even though they went 73-9 in the regular season, which I'm pretty sure is the best record of all time. But since they didn't win that year, I've gone with the 2017-18 Golden State Warriors. As I mentioned, they played in half of the NBA Finals in the last decade, winning 3 of them, all 3 of them against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So they were undoubtedly one of the best teams of the decade, and honestly, any of their winning seasons could have been contenders for this, I think. But in 2017-18, they went 58-24 in the regular season and went 16-5 in the playoffs on their way to the title, winning 4-1 against both the San Antonio Spurs and the New Orleans Pelicans. Before the Houston Rockets took them to 7 games. In the finals, they swept LeBron James, who just, as you mentioned, they swept him and the Cavaliers for the second title in a row, and third title in the last 4 seasons. And it was the first sweep in the NBA Finals since 2007, where the Spurs beat LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he was a part of both teams and lost a few times to the Warriors. And lost quite a few NBA Finals as well, by the looks of it, during his first tenure in Cleveland. The 2017-18 season was also the 4th and final year of the historic Warriors versus Cavaliers matchup, where they played each other in the NBA Finals 4 years in a row. And the core of that Golden State team, many of them who are still with the team, of course, and won all those titles, include like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, later Kevin Durant, who's since left, and a couple of Toronto Raptors legends, of course, as well, Chris Boucher and Patrick McCaw. They both won a couple titles down there. So I've gone with the 2017-18 Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, it's definitely not wrong to go for the Warriors. I mean, like I mentioned, that they're the most dominant team from the past decade, and probably if it wasn't for that 2015-2016 season where they lost to the Cavs in that Game 7 of the NBA Finals, I think that they probably would have been considered, like, I mean, they're already considered one of the best franchises right now with all their title wins from the past decade. But I think especially if they won in that 73-9 season, that definitely would have been a game changer, I think.
Yeah. And if they had that confidence boost of 4 years in a row, they might have beaten the Raptors last year as well.
Yeah, I think
going for the 5-peat.
Yeah, that would be crazy, especially for them. But you mentioned the 2016-27. You mentioned the 2015, 2016 Cavs, or I was going to mention that as one of my teams, but I think I just chose the Heat over the Cavs in that fashion because just of how dominant they were in the regular season and how they how they won those game sevens in the East Finals and the NBA Finals. But
You can't go wrong with a team with LeBron James on it. Like he's been in the finals so many times. That guy. He's
yeah,
lost a lot of he's lost a lot of finals as well, which kind of tarnishes his legacy a little bit. Even though I think he's probably the greatest basketball player ever, but um, yeah, like there's a couple of stats I mentioned there. Like he's been part of the last two times that the final's been a sweep in his first and second time with the Cavaliers. um, and but again, like any team with LeBron James on it is going to be competitive. They were very close to making, or still might, of course, play in the NBA Finals this year. So favorites to do so, I think. So we could be talking about this Lakers team if we were to do this again in a couple months' time.
yeah. The Warriors and Cavs like was definitely I feel like all 4 years except the 2015 2016 season was definitely lopsided for sure. I mean, especially with the sweep in one series or yeah, in 1 year, and then the Warriors winning in 5 games another year. It's definitely I feel like it's definitely been lopsided.
Yeah. There's also a couple of honorable mentions, of course, as well, like the Cavaliers team that beat the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, of course. To sort of to beat the best team in the world kind of makes you, I guess, in a way, the best team in the world. And of course, also the 2018-19 Toronto Raptors, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, the obviously there are favorites, of course, but they were a very good team. They won a lot of games down the stretch. And we find out tomorrow, which is May 11th, 2020, is the
May 12th. May 12th actually.
sorry, May 12th, um, is the 1 year anniversary of Kawhi Leonard's game-winning shot against the 76ers when it bounced off the rim 4 times. So that's a huge moment in Toronto Raptors history. It's sort of the shot in quotations, if you will. Yes, the 1 year anniversary of that is tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't. I might just rewatch Game 7 from that game actually from
Yeah,
last year just to relive that crazy moment.
I've watched that video probably 1,000 times in the last year, or
Yeah,
definitely multiple hundred times. So I'll probably watch it a few times tomorrow as well.
yeah. Especially now when we don't have any NBA to watch, it's definitely
Yeah,
something to keep watching over and over again. Especially as a
definitely.
Raptors fan.
And of course as well. Last week, sorry, 2 weeks ago, I guess. I can't remember. Whenever we filmed it, we did a video called Throwback Thursday, where we picked our top five starting Raptors players of all time, as well as three bench players. Kawhi Leonard, of course, was in both of our starting lineups. So if you haven't checked that video out, of course, go check that out as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have for this episode of Off the Sidelines. Bit of a shorter episode than usual, I think. But yeah, anything else to add, Matthew?
No, not for today. Just watch for our next Throwback Thursday vid, and yeah, that's all I have.
Awesome. Yeah, I have nothing else either. So thank you for watching this episode of Off the Sidelines.
See you guys.